All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome. We got an expert scouting report on the Niners' fourth-round pick, safety from Wake Forest, Malik Mustapha. This is live on YouTube. If you're there, great. Like and subscribe. If you're watching on X, I mean, cool, but I'd rather you be on YouTube. And if you're listening to the pod, that's great as well. Great to have some insight here. We've been getting a lot of great 24/7 guys over the course of this draft, and we've got another one for some perspective. Demon Deacon Digest.com, and Cam Lemons Debro is here from Demon Deacons Digest.com to talk about, let's get it right, Malik Mustapha.
Yes, Malik.
And I know you're talking to him and hopefully and his mom, and right. I know you're going to be writing more about it. So you got more coverage of this at DemonDeaconDigest.com. What was your reaction to the Niners taking him, pick 124 in the fourth round?
So I'm an Eagles fan, so that really kind of hurt.
Hey, this was a great having you today, Cam. Thanks.
No, I mean, obviously, the whole Eagles 49ers thing is fun, but I mean, I thought it was a great place for him. I mean, obviously that defense, watched him, they let people fly around left and right, and it's always kind of, you hear people say people do things the right way and they'll get rewarded. Malik's a dude that just day in, day out, he puts in the work and he earned it. So it was special seeing him pop up on Instagram Live, and I was like, okay, it's about to happen. Something's happening here, and I love the fit for him.
You just told me before we started he grew up a Niner fan. Tell us about him?
Yes. So, I mean, the kid's from right outside of Charlotte, Weddington High School, started out as a running back in, Pee Wee football days. Him and Will Shipley, who actually went a few picks after him, Clemson, really good friends. So I was talking to his mom, and his mom was like, yeah, I'm really a big Cowboys fan. I was like, I'm very glad he didn't go there. But he grew up just idolizing just the 49ers in general. And I think there was something that came out that said that, he saw Frank Gore and was starstruck by him. And that was real life, because he has just grown up every day of being a 49ers fan. So it's kind of been a fun full circle moment. And you start seeing, okay, he's kind of undersized. He didn't really get recruited that highly out of college at all, really. Ended up at Richmond, small FCS school, started 4 games, and then COVID happened. So that was fun. That got shut down. Decided to go into the portal. And, he didn't really know what was going on too much in the portal. Obviously, guys like, hey, you should jump in. Wake Forest was one of the first teams to offer him. And obviously, close to a hometown school, he really coveted that offer. Notre Dame was coming in on him, Louisville as well, but decided to stay home. And then, had a little bit of injury problems the first couple of games. But after he got through that, I think it was about game 6 or game 7. That was the year Wake Forest ended up going to the AC Championship game. It was like, okay, this dude's just starting the rest of the year. He flies around the field. He's someone that is just consistently and he looks like Adonis. I don't know if everyone's ever seen pictures of him. He's just chiseled for being all of 5'10". He's massive for that.
So this is a guy, he's a no-star recruit, right? I mean, This is a pretty incredible story. Reading about him, and this is the next question is just about the type of player, teammate he is. The Niners, as you know, they've got a type.
Right.
And their type is basically trustworthy, good dudes who play hard. And if you go to his tape, the highlights at least, there's a lot of hitting going on there as well, right? He looks like a run stuffer. So
right.
What type of player and what type of guy is he?
It was really fun watching everyone kind of slowly buy into, what Malik was going to be as the draft cycle went on. And then everyone finally landed on, if he doesn't work out in football, his clips are just going to be just teach tape for how to tackle. It is just, you sit here and he tracks the near hip, goes through his eyes, through the thighs, straight into the ground. It is just pure teach tape. And I think that's something that's kind of how Wake Forest likes to be. Obviously he's a 0-star recruit. Wake doesn't bring in a ton of, your 5 stars that are these guys that are 6'2", 6'3" safeties. If you're going to be 5'10", 200 pounds, you've got to have your fundamentals down to a T. And you see it day in, day out in each one of these films with Malik. And that's how he is. He's just explosive. Every play looks like he's shot out of a cannon. And he's just one of those guys that he always just feels like, for some reason, he's always around the ball. I don't know how it always happens. Whenever there's a fumble, whenever there's a sack, does not matter. He is somewhere. He's somewhere around the football field. And I think in terms of the type of teammate he is, people know they can trust him. And I think it gave Wake a little bit of leeway with him because he was kind of known as their eraser. it didn't really matter if a play broke down 30, 40, 50 yards down the field. You'd always see him out of nowhere coming through. I think the Clemson game had a few clips of that as well, of him just coming out of nowhere and basically just saving a touchdown. It's just kind of who he is. He's never giving up on a play. He's always playing like his hair's on fire. And yes, I think sometimes I can get him out of position from time to time. That's going to happen when you play with that little bit of reckless abandonment. But more often than not, that kind of guy is what you really like, especially if you're a 49ers that are just like, look, you're going to have to come in here and play hard every single down. And I think, he wasn't the most outspoken sort of guy the first couple of years. He's trying to find who he is, where he is, et cetera. But this past senior year, and I think Dave Clawson talked on it, he really found his voice in the locker room. He became a captain. Guys really bought into what he was talking about. And I think now he gets to kind of put that into action and say, hey, you can work like this and you too can get drafted.
So what would you say, like stylistically, what is Wake Forest's defense like? What was he asked to do defensively?
Malik was asked to do kind of a lot. And I think that was kind of both some injury problems and also just, what Malik could do. Malik was obviously he was kind of their center fielder and as a safety. Wake loves running kind of like a cover 3. That's really what they've kind of based in the last few years. But they've had him move down to a nickel. They've had him moved into a pseudo like linebacker. Kind of, I know the 49ers have a little special position for that as well. Like they've had him kind of playing around everywhere. More often than not, you kind of see him in the run game. Like they will just bring him down to the box and just say, okay, you're just going to just cut off an entire side of the field. Wake's usually a little bit more aggressive with their safeties. They're fine leaving their corners on an island because they usually have some good safeties. Jesse Bates, who's on the Falcons now, they're used to having these guys that are just like, okay, you guys can do whatever you want on the outside because we know we have someone that can finish things over the top. So that's kind of why they're used to letting Malik kind of roam and do whatever he needs to do. I think there's play against Florida State where he kind of comes out of nowhere and just barely gets his fingertips on a what should have been a touchdown, but that's just kind of what Malik does.
Is there a game or two, like for people who want to go watch him beyond the highlights? This is a 4-win team last year.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but like, is there a game that you would direct people to that would be worth watching?
I would go, if you wanted to go from just 2023, I would go back to the Clemson game. He was all over the field in the run game. He was all over the game on the film in the pass game. It was just a Malik Mustapha just masterclass. They ended up losing that game pretty tightly, but I mean, and I think to the hustle plays, there's one where Clemson probably should have scored, and Malik's 30, 40 yards down the field stopping Will Shipley. Like, that's just kind of who he is.
All right, October 7th, 17-12.
Yeah,
that sounds like a
disgusting game.
John Lynch probably liked that tape. You know what the Niners safety situation is. So special teams is definitely a way that he may have to make an impact. What would keep him? Like, what are the areas that, like, why is he a 4th rounder, not a 2nd rounder? Is it athleticism? Is it size? Is it both? Like, what are the areas that you would say, okay, if he doesn't become a starting safety 3 years from now, maybe this is why?
It's definitely not the athleticism, which is the really fun part. If some people kept up with him during the combine sort of thing, he had a 4.52 40-yard dash on a bum hamstring, 41.5-inch vertical, 10-foot 6-inch.
He had a bad hamstring at the combine.
It was at his pro day.
At his pro day, okay.
Yeah, and still ran a 4.52. Had a 10-foot 6-inch broad jump on his pro day too. The athleticism there, he's tiny. He's 5'2", and I think like a quarter of an inch.
5'10".
Yeah, he's 5'10". He's not the tallest of safeties, and I think that's something that really kind of just gets knocked on because you looked at him, you think he's probably 5'8", 5'9". So I think him coming in at 5'10" helped him. But I mean, there's just only so much range you can have being that tall. Like, you don't have the wingspan, you don't have the height necessarily. So, and I think when I mentioned it earlier, the way he plays, just kind of being not reckless, but definitely just trying to make the play. It'll definitely get him in terms of just like pump fakes and just, I guess, some kind of slow moving pieces. When he reads it very well, it's a highlight play. But I know, when the games are faster and faster and faster, that's definitely something that I think people are going to try to get him on, is just say, okay, you're trying to bait this out. We can see it. We can kind of catch you there. And I think that's probably why people were a little bit hesitant, is just like, okay, you're more reactive than anticipatory. Let's see if we can figure things out here.
So did he get dinged up a lot in his career, given the way he plays and his size? Or
not a ton. He got dinged up a little bit in the beginning of 2021. fought through that. It was really funny against Clemson in 2022. I think he popped his shoulder out and they kind of just popped it back in. And he was just like, and he's out here covering Davis Allen, who I think is 6'5", 230. And he's like, well, figure it out. He was surprisingly durable for, how much he was involved in the run game. I was a little bit surprised about that. And I'm curious if that's something people are a little bit happy about, or a little bit, are you, because I think people are going to try to add a little bit more muscle on him, just get him to the next level. How maxed out are you right now? I think that's always like a little bit of a weird thing when you have guys like this that are, they're not the most, they're not 6'2", 6'3", 210 pounds. Does adding a little more muscle like make you a little bit more susceptible to getting some injuries because your body can only handle so much, or what's going on there? Yeah,
it is interesting, hearing you talk about him. Like, I would expect him to have been a 5-year player, not a 4-year player, right? Like he's a veteran in a sense,
right?
But he hasn't played. He played 4 games in 20 at Richmond, as you said. Right. He comes to Wake, plays in 13 games in 21, but only starts 37 tackles. So I don't know what a snap count there was.
Decently high. That they rotated a lot of safeties in that year.
So he plays a lot of games in 21. So he's a 3. He's like really played 3 years.
Right.
But at 5'10", like you go, well, this is a lot of guys like this probably come back for a 5th year.
Right.
But he's a 4th rounder, so it's like it worked. He wasn't a 6th or 7th rounder.
That was a tough decision for him. I remember talking to some people in his camp around that time frame right after Wake season finished up, and it was the tough. Does he stay? Does he go? He ended up deciding. He got enough feedback that he decided, hey, I need to make this jump right now. I won't be able to make it in general, and he struggled with that for a couple of days. Like I was told that there was a couple of days he just was not doing well because he loved Wake. He loved what the coach staff does. Obviously, like you said, like he's 5'10", 200 pounds. There's not a whole lot of room for guys like that in the NFL, but it ended up working out somehow for him. And I, you look at him, you see him, he has the most reps on the bench press for a safety. And that's what I mean. Like he's one of these freaks he looks like he's made in the lab. He plays like he's made in the lab, and it just kind of worked out for him.
I know you're hoping to talk to him and I know you've got more coverage. I know you did talk to his mom,
right,
who's a Cowboys fan,
right,
and you're an Eagles fan. So both of you probably were just
awful day,
awful day for both of you. But what did she have to say about just like what draft day was like for him?
Awesome. They were kind of expecting, around that range. I think that was like, okay, today is going to be the day. It's going to be a little bit earlier, probably. Obviously, there were some nerves, and it was a long process for them. But they have fallen in love with what the 49ers plan is for him. And, they're, I think it's May 9th that they have to get out there. They're excited. Like that entire day, there was a lot of Wake Forest coaches and fans there with him as well, in his terms with former teammates. And I think that speaks to who he is. It's just his teammates came out of nowhere to come support him that day. They're all thrilled to be going out to San Fran into the Bay Area.
We'll hit you with a question here before I let you go. Eric said, can you ask if he thinks Mustafa could start over either Jair Brown or Talanoa Hufanga? That's a pretty tall ask. I also think one of the beauties, if you're Malik, is like Hufanga's coming off an injury.
Right.
Brown has not established himself as like the starter. So I want your answer, obviously. My answer is I don't see that, but I do see the opportunity pretty quickly, 4 reps, someone's banged up, or if he plays well. What do you think?
If you told me week 15 he started getting some starts, I wouldn't be super shocked because that's just kind of who he is as a person. I think out the gate, it's a little hard to expect a 4th round pick to come in and start. I think that's just a really tough task. But I think you should not be surprised if week 1, week 2, and it's not just special team snaps. It's okay, he's rotating in, it's 2nd, 3rd down. He's coming in on some stuff like that. Especially like if it's a 3rd and 2nd, 3rd and 3rd, and they need some actual run support there. I think that's in those situations he's going to absolutely thrive. And so I think it's going to start out some situational. I wouldn't be surprised. And I like Hufanga. Like I think he's solid, but the injury scares me a little bit. Yeah. Injuries are always really tough to like come back. We expect these guys to get hurt and then immediately come back to who they were. That's just not how the human body works. And so I think, if he kind of displaced him week 15, week 16, I don't think you should be shocked, but I'm not going to put that in pin right now.
All right, there he is, Eagles fan Cam. All right, hey man, thanks for making time. I know Demon Deacon Digest part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Cam's got more coverage there now of Malik, and we'll have more. So that's awesome, man. Thanks for making time on Sunday, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to bounce Cam out. By the way, real quick, if you're watching this live, in the description, there's a link about to jump over to another video on Jarrett Kingston, 49ers offensive lineman from USC, 6th round pick. So I'll see you guys over at that link if you're watching live. Thanks, everybody. Bye.